Okay, everyone, just a few minutes late. I think we are ready to get started. So I will go ahead and get us started. Today is Friday, July 25th. This is a work session on the Better Public Meetings proposal. So we're going to be hearing about an exciting potential new project for Anchorage. So we'll do introductions. I will give just a very brief overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Member Baldwin Day and our other presenters. So first, let's do member introductions. And reminder, your microphone may be turned off still. So we'll start with Mr. Martinez.
George Martinez.
Aaron Baldwin Day.
Keith McCormick.
Yaro Silvers.
Anna Brawley.
Felix Rivera.
And looks like we have Member Johnson on the phone. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. Any other members on the phone? Okay, I don't hear any. We are also joined in the room by a couple of our guests who we'll introduce shortly. We'll get to your introduction in a second. Members of Legislative Services, Assembly Council, clerk staff, and member of the public. So I guess I'll just say that I am not the subject matter expert for this item, but I'm excited about it. So I'm going to actually turn it to Member Baldwin Day. We'll have a presentation, and then we'll also introduce our other speakers. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. I'm particularly excited about this project because it is a project that predates my service on the Assembly. So this has actually been months in the making, and it started while I was still employed at Alaska Public Interest Research Group, was helping to convene Anchorage Housing Club and some other citizen organizations, and was connecting with a lot of other entities around Anchorage, both in the public and private sector, who were all asking the same question about civic engagement. How do we get more people into the public dialogue, into assembly meetings, into committee meetings, into work sessions, to really engage with their elected representatives and to engage in the process of good government? So there was this really ad hoc group that came together that started talking about, okay, what would it take for us to really move outward into the community and ask people, particularly folks who don't ordinarily appear in assembly meetings or submit written comment, to ask them some questions about what the barriers are that they experience to participating in their local government. Why aren't your voices being represented well? And what we came to was that this was going to be a massive undertaking. And those of us who were sitting in the room who all had regular jobs, who all were very engaged civically ourselves, weren't going to have the capacity to really steward this project in the way that it deserved to be stewarded. So skip ahead. I started my assembly service, and my colleagues in the civic engagement work carried forward, and they discovered this really incredible project, this opportunity that's been happening in other cities around the United States that is specifically what we were envisioning, but someone's already doing it, and then they're doing it really, really well. And so they were pursuing that opportunity and let me know that that was actually a possibility for us to bring to Anchorage, that the Better Public Meetings project could actually be a reality here. So with that introduction, I'm really excited to ask our guests to introduce themselves, and they are actually going to drive this presentation because one of the things I love about this is it is a community-led initiative. I am here as the supportive assembly person, but everything about the way that this project unfolds, should we choose to approve it, will be led by people who are Anchorage citizens. It will be led by our community. And I think that's really, really important. So would y'all introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead and introduce both of you for the record, and then whoever would like to start, go ahead.
There we go. Ariana Belizzi with the Federation of Community Councils.
And Jesse Lavoie, YWCA CEO.
And we have Nick Valos on the line.
Hi, everyone.
So
Nick, could you just share for everyone what organization you represent?
Yeah, definitely. I work for the National Civic League. The Civic League is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, good governance orgs in the United States. It goes back to 1894, founded by Theodore Roosevelt, Louis Brandeis, and Mary Mumford. and I work specifically in the Center for Democracy Innovation within the League.
Thanks. And just
Happy
one
to
more-
share more, though, if you'd like a little bit more on that.
Thanks. Maybe we can come back to that topic as we move through the presentation. And then I'll also ask our presenters, are you okay with questions as they come up, or would you prefer to hold to the end?
I'm a fan of questions as they come up. Let's not forget them.
Okay, so yeah, members just flag me down or text me if you'd like to be in the queue. Thanks. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll get us started. So you heard Nick on the phone, and I'm here with the YWCA with RA with FCC. So we are a part of this group that member Baldwin Day got together, what feels like a year ago, but was just a few months ago, to talk about civic engagement and how to increase accessibility and comfort when working with the Assembly and just local government. So YWCA is obviously interested in that as a partner and just kind of seeing this through as a community member, because it's important to our work as we work with disadvantaged populations who may not otherwise be at these meetings or have access to these meetings or feel even comfortable attending Assembly meetings or our traditional way of doing government right now. So we're very interested in doing that. This is also led by the Federation of Community Councils. So Ari is definitely helping on the back end of this and gathering the group. So we'll go into the specifics with the presentation here shortly, but I do want to turn it over to Nick because he is the one that's leading the actual pieces and can probably better explain this in the jargon that I cannot. So Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next few slides.
Awesome. I'd just like to say thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure working so far with everyone in the community, Member Baldwin Day, Ariana, Jesse. We're really, really excited over here at the League. So the Better Public Meetings project is in the second phase of its work, and I hope everyone can hear me right now. The second phase of its work, it's funded by the AAA ICDR Foundation, which is the Institute for Conflict and Dispute Resolution Foundation. The first phase of this project was with 3 communities, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Boulder, Colorado, and Mesa, Arizona. And we were working with specifically public meetings. So any sort of official meeting setting that engages the public on a regular basis with a very traditional format. And the belief here is that there are opportunities to engage the public in unique and innovative digital, in-person, hybrid ways, asynchronous ways, to sort of renovate the sort of old standing civic infrastructure that has served us so well, but needs to be updated to sort of meet the needs of the time. And we work with 3 sorts of styles of meetings. One in Fayetteville was their police advisory board and commission. In Mesa, Arizona, it was their school board, specifically their governing board. And then in Boulder, Colorado, it was directly the city council. And so this project really is, it's a mixture of, it's really a collaborative process with the community. It's a community engaged research project. We found, we support this work by, asking questions, by engaging the community, having the community involved in voicing their thoughts and opinions, and then working really closely with a team to think about possible ways to make some sort of iteration, some sort of intervention that's relevant to the community. And so that's a high level of the project. I will say one of the highlights of this is working with Boulder, Colorado, and they innovated their study session, basically to involve a different sort of format, no dais, no microphone, invitation through community connectors, underrepresented groups, and it was a deliberative format. And that has proven to be such a successful model that they're willing to actually implement that as part of their regular infrastructure. And so this is the type of thing that we're in, and in Mesa, they did something different. It was more youth focused because it was a school board. They did something called Hacktivate, where the youth solve problems and then present amongst their governance board and committee. So we want to do is a similar thing: is work very closely with the community on how to do civic engagement within the assembly and within other processes, including the community councils, and really try and add something really interesting and fun into the community. And I will add that one portion of this is what we're calling a creative, it's thinking about democracy creatively and in a fun way. And so there's a legislative theater component to this project specifically that we're thinking to run in Anchorage, which is involving the arts community. And so this really is a really interesting opportunity to think, about how to engage the community. And so I think there was 2 slides. I'm happy to briefly, I think I kind of touched on both of those, but I'm happy to jump into the sort of why behind this, and it'll be surprise to no one to hear about the challenges that come with town hall meetings, maybe less so in Anchorage, but at least in a lot of other places, public meetings are quite contentious. You don't have to look too far to see the challenges that come with it, partially because of the format, partially because of polarized political climate. But what we're thinking and what we've shown through our work is that we can build better trust between elected officials and city staff with community by better processes. And we do that through a little bit of research, but we do that also by building collaborative mechanisms in place. And so that's kind of what we're working towards in this project, and building that sort of infrastructure and trust that back into institutions. And so this is the stages of the process at a very high level. I was mentioning how there's sort of a community engaged research. We call this essentially, it's 2-pronged. We do a civic infrastructure scan. It's talking to the community members, running a community survey, reading local documents that, because obviously there is, a wealth of experience and history in your own community, and putting that all together with a set of findings, and presenting that to the community, having a community conversation around this stuff, and then collaborating and thinking through the findings and what does this mean, and how can we essentially, what would we like to target, what's missing from this information, who's missing, and then thinking through how we might actually achieve something over the span of let's say 10 months to a year, and then integrating that. And hopefully there's a piece there that it lives beyond the project. And part of that really is us working to help provide the tools to the community, and helping train and having the community facilitate these activities with us support. And I just want to highlight here that this is an iterative and a collaborative process. We're here to work with and not tell people how to work. It's been a collaborative process in each one of the communities, and I think they would vouch for the work that's been done. And I've done this a few times now with a variety of communities, and so I think it will be an excellent opportunity. And I think we can jump into the next slide here. So I mentioned civic infrastructure scan. That's qualitative research. One portion of that is we have what we call a civic engagement scorecard. You might think of this something like Yelp or a Google review. It's just a very quick snapshot to get a little bit of baseline data at public meetings. And so we've implemented this in every one of the communities. In Boulder, it ran for 3 months at their city council sessions. Anyone that attends a public meeting fills it out, and we get an opportunity to understand how the public view their experiences. And that's part of it. And another part of this is what I was mentioning, participatory performances with Perfect, who wants to work very closely with the arts community, some sort of fun engagement exercise and performance through dialogue. And then eventually through the sort of community feedback, through the conversations with assembly members, through our conversations with a variety of stakeholders, including the community councils and the YMCA and others, that thinking about how we might implement a sort of strategy going forward.
So I can take over here. Nick, thank you for that oversight. I think it was a really good groundwork for what we're discussing. And so now we're moving on to why Anchorage and why we've wanted to bring this here. There's really 4 main points to this, being long history of civic engagement. So Anchorage is very well known for that, even though it is young, which is point 4, a young city open in hearing about this and learning new tools that could help have a large list of community partnerships. So YWCA Alaska is one of those, but there are many that are working in these spaces, and we'll go over those partners. But we're also interested. We're selfishly here to learn something too, so that we can improve our processes, which is going to support you. And then that wasn't me. And then we have a community council system that is large and robust that we can also lean on and engage further in this as well. So what I kind of wanted to stop and take a beat, because we've been talking at you for the last 15, 20 minutes, is hearing from each of you, if you don't mind, why civic engagement is important to the assembly. Like obviously Aaron had outlined, and it seems obvious, George, but just hearing your personal connections as to why I think we'll see some synergy. So if you don't mind, let us know.
Yeah, and so before folks respond to that, Member Silvers has a question. Okay, we'll come back to you then. Yeah, yeah, we'll do popcorn style. Whoever would like to share some. I'm sure. Okay, I will charge ahead then. I guess I'm interested in civic engagement. I'm excited about this project. Ari and I met not long ago to talk about it, and I'm really excited to see it coming from the community and not just within the municipality. But I know we've also been doing a lot of work, legislative services in particular, on getting more folks involved, informed, all of that. So I'm glad to see that happening. To actually answer the question, I'm really interested because, I mean, we can say things about democracy and it requires participation, but I think in particular in Anchorage, we've had such a strong civic culture, and it feels like that has been damaged or bruised over kind of what happened the last 2 years with COVID and other things. But I think also we've gotten in this cycle of kind of reacting negatively to things when somebody tries to solve a problem, for example, and then it just creates a feedback cycle of distrust and all of those things that I think other cities are experiencing. And so I think it's helpful to approach that from this kind of creative perspective and really look at that. So I think it's really critical to all of the work that we do and really doing what the community needs and wants. So, other thoughts on that?
Okay, well, I'll assume you're all here for the good civic engagement of what you signed up for. So thank you for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we can move on.
So talking about the partners, so like I had mentioned, the YWCA Alaska is one of many, and we have more coming along. So we have personally worked with Anchorage Housing Club, the Alaska Voter Hub, Anchorage, and then we also have all these other engaged partners, NeighborWorks Alaska, who's come to some of our conversations, Teaching Better Artists, Native Samoan Corporation, and more. So we're building out our network to be able to do this work and again, be supported with these public processes.
And I will just say, these are the people I've been able to get on my calendar up until this point. And the more real this project becomes, the conversations that I've had in the community when I bring it up say, wow, I didn't know this was something we could do, even before I've even fully explained it.
And so what we're here today to engage you with is the ask here. So with our National Civics Lead partner, and then with all of those partnerships here in Alaska, we are asking of you if there are at least two assembly members who can champion this effort with us and show support of diving in and learning more. Actively supporting the deployment and utilization of this scorecard. I know that can be intimidating and certainly invite a lot of unrest at times, but I think it'll be very curious for all of us to either have our assumptions met or learn some perspective on that. It's been a very interesting tool to use in other assemblies. Consider the recommendations and innovations. So I really want to emphasize this. Again, we're not coming and saying you need to change this. It's more along the lines of, oh, we didn't know something like that could work. Should we try it here? And that's where the YWCA is really kind of leaning in on, because again, like I said, our partners are here a little selfishly because we can also use the lessons learned here. So kind of working alongside us and considering some of the things that we'll learn will be very interesting, and I think we'll build that trust and be able to build that community rapport. and then engage collaboratively. So we have a lot of community partners, but really we need all of you to help us do this and to be engaged and to be excited about the work and to be curious about what we're going to find out. And this will only help everybody, and especially us as community partners, support the assembly.
And I can talk about the timeline a little bit when we get to that last bit. I will say the timeline here is important because I'm trying to avoid budget season. I know that that's coming. And so the project kickoff being in August, and then National Civic League coming to Anchorage late September, early October. And then from there, it would be continuing to work on the survey, the community scorecard and the survey through budget season. And then we would come back to you in the new year and start that collaborative process. And then the idea being that implementation would start around May. So it is a full year of work, which we're really excited about. And all of National Civic League's and Nick's work is covered by that grant. So it is a full year of collaboration and contract work with NCL that is completely covered.
So that is what we have. We wanted to leave you with some final thoughts and questions. So we definitely want to answer those. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So turn again to Member Silvers.
Okay, so I'm reading through this and I see that it mentions community councils quite a lot. And I'm active in my community council. I appreciate community councils. That being said, I would like to know kind of what your plans are to go beyond community councils, because I think one of the biggest complaints that I hear about community councils is that they're not representative of the community as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the civic scorecard, we would give the opportunity, and really, I would be encouraging councils to participate in that, though, of course, it's an opt-in. So I know some councils will sign on and some won't. And then the community survey, where I want anybody to take it, anybody who is invited to take it. When I say pushing out to as many partners as possible, if you have any group that wants to hear about this project, I want to go talk about it to them. And then the deliberation and all of that is open to the public. I think something that Nick and I had talked about is as part of the survey, identifying people who are, or communities who are often missing from these conversations, and making sure to invite them to the deliberative process and the work that's done towards the later half of this project. But the feedback portion is beyond the council system. Does that answer?
Kind of, but it brings up another question.
Sure.
So you're saying groups and people will be invited to give their feedback. What about just the general public?
Yeah, it's open to everybody. Like, I guess the best way to commune with the public often is just going to different groups and trying to hit all the community groups, but then we want to publish it in the ADN. We want to do op-eds. I would run bus ads if I could. I want everyone to take the survey.
Okay, and so like if you did something in the ADN, it would have a link that just, anybody reading could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. We're kind of branding it under this Engage Anchorage project. The idea being like all of Anchorage is welcome and we want everyone's feedback. And then the scorecard is implemented at the assembly meetings and the community council meetings, because those are our existing systems that we want to see the feedback from the people who are attending those. And I will, selfishly say, knowledge of community councils is sometimes hard to share among the public. Not everybody even knows about their council. So if I can educate people on the council system, maybe more people would be interested in attending. You never know.
Yeah, I'd like to tag on to answer that question if I could. So when we were first conceiving of this project, one of the ways that we considered reaching beyond sort of the usual groups that show up and participate in local government was to use existing either formal or informal networks of people as a way to distribute or disseminate information. So thinking about all of the diversity that we have here in Anchorage, the multiculturalism that is Anchorage. I'm thinking about those named and unnamed groups and leaders who are in many ways sort of the keepers of their culture, the stewards of their community or their micro community within Anchorage. And so that was part of where the idea of reaching to individual groups came from. But the goal of this is to be a true whole community effort. So even though we have the Federation engaged as a partner, the focus is to, as you said, Member Silvers, move beyond community councils as the sort of representative bodies that we have in neighborhoods and think more broadly about who else and how else we can engage people.
I'll just add on to that too. That's where the community partners come into play. So I guess I wanted to amplify that. So YWCA Alaska has been hosting community conversations often about policy decisions that you all are discussing here around this room with each other, and even a few of you have attended those as guests. And so that's where we'll also be able to use those networks and that trust that we've already built within those micro communities, as Member Baldwin Day was saying, to share this further. So it will go out past community councils. We're going to try and capture as many people as we can, because that's also the work that the community partners are trying to do.
Okay, thanks. I have Member Rivera and then Member Martinez.
Yeah, thanks. So a few things from me. I want to underscore the same concern that Member Silvers raised. As I was both reading the draft resolution and going through the presentation, I saw a very large focus in that on community councils. And I just, I'm curious about how this work is being framed, about who this work is for. Is this for civic-minded folks already in our community, or is it for people who don't see themselves in our current civic culture? And I will just say, from my first blush reading of a lot of this, it felt to me like more of the former and not the latter. So I just want to make sure, as we are constructing this, that we're really thinking about how we can make sure we're reaching out to different communities and building this in a way that folks feel like, I've never been to City Hall, never been to an assembly meeting, never been to a community council meeting, but now maybe I will start thinking about these things, right? I think for me, that would be what I want. What I don't want is the people who already have substantial amount of power in our community getting even more power because of this. That concerns me greatly. So I did have a question about the presentation talks about how Anchorage was one of 2 communities selected. If I got that, yes, 2 cities nationwide selected. And then I believe Member Baldwin Day talked about, should we choose to approve it? Could you just talk a little bit about what our role is here, and then how was Anchorage selected for this project?
Do you want me to field that? Okay. So our role in this, so the National Civic League is really only interested in partnering with communities, however ripe they may be for the project, where the entity that is going to be, the focus of the project is actively interested in hearing the recommendations from the community and giving consideration to whatever comes forward, whatever innovations might be suggested. It would be a waste of their time and energy to come into a community where they weren't actively invited and welcomed in. And so our role is, with this resolution, would be to say, yes, we would love for you to come and do this work in our community. And to express perhaps more clearly what the parameters are for our desires for the work. So to that end, I've made some notes because I really appreciated the way that you phrased a couple of things, and I think it might make its way into the draft AR. So that's our role, is to say yes, to offer. We would be offering a tiny little measure of financial support, which would be coming through legislative services as part of their budget. And Claire and I have already spoken about that. And then just being open to the process. That would be our role. And then individual members would obviously be invited and encouraged to engage in public meetings and to be present for the process in whatever way their individual schedules permit. So that's our role, is basically to give the blessing, community do its work. As far as the selection, I'm aware that part of the reason that we were for NCL is because we already have something most communities don't, which actually is the community council system, which is a kind of an existing, neighborhood-based means of public engagement that is actually quite robust compared to other cities in the country. And so they were really intrigued by that. And to actually leverage that to say, okay, well, this is working. What else? How can we move beyond the system that exists and create an even more representative model? Beyond that, if there were other selection criteria, I'm not sure what they are, but
really, really good timing. I happened to watch Nick's presentation about their work in Boulder, and particularly the work around so he called it a study session. It's your version of a work session. They changed their version of a work session totally within code, followed all the procedures, but they were able to make it collaborative, with brought in community members and were able to work together with the assembly on a project. And I was like, mind blown. This sounds amazing. How do we do that here? So I emailed him and said, hi, I'm with Federation. And he's like, what are community councils? And I said, let me tell you about community councils. And then I was interested in the scorecard simply for community councils. Like, oh, that's cool. A little Yelp review that we could get some real feedback on what people are experiencing their councils, and if they're having good experiences or bad experiences, or what we can help train councils on, some live feedback on that. And he was like, we have this other project and you happen to be right in the right timing of, we're looking for our next cities. And so then I just made a ton of phone calls and was like, can I get some soft yeses from people? Some soft, we love this. And it just kept rolling. A lot of me being like, don't forget about us. Anchorage is really cool.
Mr. Martinez, then I'll be in the queue, and then Ms. Silvers.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this project. Thank you for meeting with me and other members prior to this work session. I just wanted to make sure I understood a frame as well. The target for the body of work is hopefully an improved our process, one of something about us, not necessarily to improve community council per se, but that will happen because that's why you got this grant and you have a vision for that. But it's to help cities and local governments have more inclusive process somewhere, shape or form, and then see how that can be scaled across. Is that making sure I understand the target essentially?
Yeah.
And the outcome?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Yes, and we the way that Nick had originally, when I'd watched his presentation, it had been how the 3-minute testimony model doesn't invite collaboration. It often can be very difficult and scary for people to participate in. And if we're trying to get people who are not civically minded, what other creative ways can we consider, as he said, asynchronous, hybrid, digital models, collaborative work sessions? What are all of our options? And then the idea being, what are the suggestions that would best work for Anchorage? Because I can tell you there's a ton of options out there, but I don't know necessarily what's going to meet our demographic, what's going to meet our community where we need to be met. So yeah, the idea is that it will it will give suggestions to the assembly, and also doing the scorecard in the community council meetings. I will also get a lot of information, and those councils will get hopefully information about what works in their meetings and things that they could try. Because anything you guys could try, we also can try. There's no reason that if you guys wanted to do a citizen assembly, we also couldn't do that, you know, for something else or in a different way. So I think that kind of
Right.
improved civic engagement can spread in a positive way across the city. Lots of people could learn from it.
I think that the starting point of the gap, like, for example, the 3-minute testimony rub, I think that is a really compelling series of insights that would be helpful to frame, even for us, like the why, the early why. It goes back to, you know, why we were selected. I mean, you hustled, you found an opportunity. That's phenomenal. But there's this other purposeful why that we all bump into here and there, and we hear about it in a variety of ways, like that particular one. And I think that would be really helpful. And I'd also frame what I also hear is that essentially there's very little opportunity for comfortable power today to thrive through this. And the reason, if power is very comfortable today in a community with the status quo, the nature of the project itself is structured around a series of engagements and even the theater element that essentially is a paradigm shifter, right? So that the current folks that find themselves often at the table were to allow themselves to go through this, they would potentially be transformed on the other side themselves. It's not necessarily to be inclusive only, but it's to transform the way people see the relationships to each other and to government. And so I see that as a really interesting and compelling thing, which raises the question around the invitation to community, making sure that community members, you know, how that's really framed around that. And maybe there's another aspect to it, and I'll go back to the original question, which was, you know, what civic engagement was to us. The reason that this is interesting to me is aside from better government apparatus, decision making, frameworks that community can understand, we can have shared language, and so many powerful, important things. But in our community, social isolation is the biggest driver of all of the negatives. Full stop. So the disconnect between people and isolation leads to high levels of all sorts of toxic inter and intrapersonal dynamics in our community, that the more we can see each other, the more that the public space is a safe space, the more we can find connections to interests, the better for our community's health and well-being. So there's this really important element about connectivity and community well-being in a place that we find struggles with those challenges, the well-being challenges, and we see it play out in some less than healthy mechanisms in the public sphere. So I see there's a really powerful relationship between the public health and closing the distance with these types of projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And research shows that successful neighborhood governance comes from bridging across, like out of your own, not just bridging within, but bridging out and collaborating with other groups. That it makes neighborhood governance and, you know, civic engagement in general stronger. So.
Next, I have myself in the queue, then Member Silvers. I appreciate the dialogue on this. I guess my two questions, and these might be for Nick, just based on his experience working with other communities. I'm interested if you can unpack a little bit how you all distinguish between, say, more process and better process. Because I think we're talking about better process, but we've also heard, at least in our community, right? You know, oh, well, we didn't do enough process, that it's a quantity issue. And I think, I see some heads nodding. So I think, so I'm curious kind of how that happens, or, because we certainly want to follow our public process, but not drag things out infinitely, right? So how do we deal with that? And then the other question is, in your experience with other cities, and you mentioned staying in the code structure. I'm curious if there's an example of maybe a creative solution to, again, we're not changing code to do this, so adhering to the rules, but able to bend them a little bit, or to be a little more flexible. So I'm just curious if you have examples there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they're kind of related, the idea of more versus better process and working with the existing code structure. I'll start with the latter. We specifically have a look at the state sunshine laws, local city charters, municipal codes, to understand sort of the bylaws and the ways and operations of these legal meeting structures, and work within those parameters. And that's what we did in Boulder specifically. And just from my own research, I mean, it does vary state by state. Some states have a lot, can have a little bit more controlling forms of open meetings laws. But you do find at least a lot of variation and a lot of leeway for creativity, as if not, especially with the language that is posed, is quite general and open. And there's a lot of authority given to the chair to make recommendations. And so that was, us working within their open meetings laws. And there was a lot of leeway we got rid of the dais, we got rid of a microphone, and it was an open conversation, structured conversation, a facilitated one, but very different than what they did. And that was within existing code. Back to your point about, more versus better process. We're not trying to create an elongated process. We're just trying to create a qualitatively different experience. And that comes with thinking about, we think about it in terms of what happens before a meeting, what happens during a meeting, and what happens after. And so what are the different sorts of means and tools that we can pull out of a toolbox to think about engaging community before, and then what are the different varieties, asynchronous or online or in person, that happen during, and then what happens after? What's the feedback loop? What's the iteration? What's the lessons learned? What's the evaluation? And so we're really thinking about a variety of different things based off of what you're all saying in your community, and thinking about other contexts and how we might, propose a variety of ideas. And so in the proposals that we provided to different communities, it includes some of, as the member has talked about, improving the process, specifically of the assembly, specifically of local government, but beyond that. So it's community councils, it's broader community engagement. So there's going to be a variety of things that and opportunities that arise from this.
Okay, thank you. I'll just note we have about 10 minutes left. I know we started late because of technical issues. We can go a couple minutes over, but we do have a work session at 1. So just to note timing. So Ms. Silvers, you're next.
Yeah, I appreciate a lot of things about this. I think, looking at alternatives to the 3-minute public testimony, I really like that. I remain very concerned about the fact that the scorecard is limited to assembly meetings and community councils. And so it's limited to people that are already kind of engaged in these paths. And so I guess my question is, how does this scorecard go out into the community in communities that don't have community council systems?
So there's kind of 2 survey methods that we're employing. There's the community survey that is open to everyone, that asks, how do you participate in, where the questions we're building are, how do you participate right now? Like, are you just voting? Are you attending assembly meetings? What drives you to participate? What is your community like? What would it look like if you wanted to participate? And then the scorecard is a reflection of the meetings themselves. So they're more a snapshot in time, a Yelp review of that meeting. And so that's why deploying the scorecards at the assembly and community council meetings gives feedback about people's experience experiences in those meetings. But the community survey is the thing that goes in large and engages people. And then also as part of that, people can sign up to get more information so that when we do the iterative processes, the participatory theater, people can sign up to get more information, and hopefully they're included in that as well, but also doing targeted invites to groups who are not part of the community council system and beyond, to all of our partner organizations, to get people in the room who are not normally part of the system to be part of those participatory theater elements, the deliberative elements, whatever suggestions come to you guys, and that opens to the public, and we want people to participate as part of that. Like, all of that is growing beyond. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so in a community that doesn't have community councils, the scorecard would just go out into the assembly meetings.
Yes.
So basically, I could look at this as two pieces. You're looking at the assembly meetings as kind of one piece with the scorecard, but then you're also rolling in the community councils as another piece that you're looking at with the scorecard.
Yes, and then the broader survey about people's civic experience, essentially. So like kind of two models of information to give Nick and his team as much information about the best suggestions for Anchorage, right? What works and what doesn't work in your meetings right now, and also what is the community saying about civics generally in Anchorage? Because I think a lot of times, and something we talked about in the working group earlier this year, was when communities who are not regularly coming to assembly meetings have something that they want to show up about. How do they show up? How do they organize? When do they show up? And I think that was a really interesting question that we came to, and something that I want this survey to kind of hopefully get at is like, what does drive people when they are driven to show up, when they don't normally show up? Because some people will just like activate for something in particular. And so what is that? And how do we get to them regularly?
So we also have town halls periodically, and I think a lot of people do a sign-in list on those. So would that be a good idea, maybe, to send that scorecard out to the sign-in people that sign into these town halls?
If you can put it in your newsletters, I'm going to send it out to every state legislator and be like, please include in your newsletter. It's going to go. If those lists, if you're happy to share that information, I'm happy to like send it out. Assembly Legislative Services, the chair letter, anyone. I want the link to be like engageanchorage.com, and like I said, I'd put it on every bus if I could.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just really like to think about ways, like the town halls and stuff, that we can engage beyond the community councils with the scorecard part too.
That might be an interesting thing to ask, if other entities connected to the assembly would be willing to adopt the scorecard. I'm thinking about, like maybe ASD board meetings. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that, but that could be interesting feedback as well. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think should be explored. Thanks for raising that.
Mr. Martinez.
Just a couple other points, suggestions potentially. Place-based signs with the QR code, right, where people are. You mentioned Engage Anchorage. I think like that was the little domain name you just kind of flashed. No, that doesn't mean anything. You want to say something like a different brand that is essentially a call to action with the name of the overarching, like your voice matters, something related to the why. That is the call. But yeah, right. Something that is interesting in that space. And then also potentially, especially for one of the better practices that people are bringing into asking vulnerable communities to participate in anything, is to find ways to incentivize participation. So I'd make sure that if there are ways to think about that, incentivizing participation, especially for less present groups, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I see him taking notes. I'll commit to putting it in my newsletter for sure when it's ready. Mr. Gates had a question or comment.
Thank you. It's all very fascinating and interesting. It looks like a great project. I just wondered, the focus so far of the discussion has been on the assembly meetings and the community councils, but public meetings are also held by a lot of boards and commissions. We have a large number of those. Like the Planning and Zoning Commission, they're very engaged and they have regular meetings twice a month. And we have a number of others, the CDA and so forth. I just wondered, how is this project involve boards and commission meetings and other, I guess, subordinate bodies in public meetings, if at
Thank-
all.
Thank you. And I think it kind of gets back to what Assemblymember Riviera said, which was who's our audience? And so in a world where I had $1 million, I would launch this at every commission. But I think I have to keep my scope just due to the grant and the amount of time that I get Nick for, or we get Nick for. So in our conversations, the focus of this project is really the assembly, because you guys are the decision-making body in this community. And so if we want better public input, the first place to go is really the decision-making body. But can we learn things? Can we deploy the civic scorecard in other ways? Is that a model that we pick up and we decide as a city we want to move through in other places? Absolutely. I would say we could do it everywhere, but for the scope of this project, this is where it's like ultimately the assembly is the focus for this.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, and I know I'll ask maybe if we need a couple extra minutes, we'll go, but like I said, we have a work session at 1. I think just to recap, if you can remind folks, I know there's a draft resolution on the table. What is the intent? And I'm looking at Member Baldwin Day as far as timing. It sounds like if there's suggestions, we do have Open Meetings Act rules, so maybe sending those to Jesse and Ari would make sense. And then it sounds like you're also maybe looking for another champion. So if you want to just comment on that.
Yes. So obviously I'm already volunteering myself to be one of the 2 champions, but would love to be joined by someone else who's really passionate about seeing this through. This is set for introduction on Tuesday, I believe. I will check with the clerk and make sure. But you will see this coming before you as a resolution. And then we would need to decide whether or not this is something that we want to support going forward. So.
Thanks. Any last comments from actually, Ms. Ross, go ahead.
Claire Ross,
Yeah.
Assembly Legislative Services Director. I just want to say that our office is really supportive of this. We are doing through the Assembly more trying to formalize our civic engagement work to get more people involved. And so we would be willing to help with this, and it really fits in with what we're doing. Just to remind you, we already do our newsletters and city nerd nights and some of those things to bring people in. And we've really been focusing kind of on spheres of participation for the people who already come and know, making it easier for them, making the newsletter and the website. And once we build that foundation, then we want to reach out to new people. We didn't want to invite people to a party while we're still baking the cake and cleaning the kitchen. So now that is more under control, then we can go out to people who don't know what a municipality is or an assembly and then engage them. And we do try to capture when someone is interested. As you may recall, with the camping ordinance, had a lot of new people get engaged. We set up emails to those people to let them know what's an executive session, when does the vote happen, what happens next. And when they do give that little glimmer of interest, to try to coach them on how it works to bring them in more. And then one thing we did at the library for our last strategic plan, which I've told probably most of you about, we worked with Diamond Center and had a booth at Diamond Center from about 9 to 10 p.m. on a Thursday night. We thought we'd get people coming out of Dave & Buster's to get that younger crowd, but what we ended up getting is people who were finishing shift change at work. And so we talked to a lot of really young people, which were always like, how do you talk to the 20-year-olds? And that was one way to do it. So I would love to take some of the questions you have from the survey. We just had 3 questions on a whiteboard and sticky notes, and people wrote their answers up. And so you could go to grocery stores, Chanchnu Park, Diamond Center, Red Apple, and go to different places to get people's involvement that way. So I'd love to pitch in and help with that.
Thanks. And then in the spirit of the 3 minutes, we'll take 1 more minute over. And if you just want to make some closing comments, then we'll end.
Yeah, we'll be quick, but we can't do this without you. So if you guys don't pass the resolution, this project won't move forward, because it is a project about your body and the work that can be done in collaboration with you guys. And so that's why we're here and we're having this work session and we're having all these conversations, because it has to be with you and we want to do it with you. I will say, people are really excited for it. They genuinely are. And I'm just at the beginning of like I said, just at the beginning of talking to partners about this, still continuing to collaborate with people, still continuing to introduce the subject. And I think like I said, the more real it becomes, the easier it is for me to be like, this is a real thing that we're doing, and people genuinely want to participate, and they just don't always know how. And that education and that collaboration is so important to work with you guys.
Yeah, I'll echo all that, and also just thank you for your time and exploring this idea with us. We know that it can be very intimidating to consider changes to processes or talking about what's working or what is happening right now. So we appreciate you being vulnerable, and just know that the YWCA Alaska and all those other partners and more are here to support your work. So we don't want to run against it. We want to run with you, and we're here to support you in that way. So we're excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and we will be adjourned. And then our next work session is in this room at 1 p.m. in a few minutes. Thank you.